Naturally, I, like all my UN colleagues, were extremely worried. This concentration of people at the border with Egypt, with less and less space available for them to survive, is extremely dramatic. A spill out of population, another refugee crisis. Let's not forget that most people in Gaza are already refugees. Another refugee crisis would be catastrophic, would be not only catastrophic from the humanitarian point of view, it would be politically unsolvable. It would be, as I have already said, a nail in the coffin of any future peace process. So must be avoided at all costs through aid into Gaza, through the humanitarian ceasefire, liberation of hostages, all the things that have been repeated now in vain, unfortunately, for weeks.
Yeah, and context for our viewers, we know that almost 1.9 million people, that's what, more than 80% of Gaza's total population, has been displaced. The Israelis, as we understand, are drawing up plans, as you would have seen, Mr. غراندي, as well, for a ground offensive in Rafah. Where, I suppose the obvious question that I keep asking my guests, where are Gazans supposed to go? Are you having any conversations with Egypt or other nations about what the political options, the options are for the Palestinian refugees?
I think Egypt has been very clear from the very beginning of this tragedy that they would not wish Palestinians to massively flow into Egypt. And I think the insistence has to be on what I said. Let me repeat it again. Aid has to go into Gaza. People have to be assisted inside. But without a ceasefire, this is very, very difficult, as we just heard from your program.
Yeah, it is very difficult. We're seeing the repercussions of this, the aid not getting in, and the lack of any sort of political solution to this crisis. But this is, of course, one of several crises playing out that we have been covering. You were recently in Ukraine, and I believe in Sudan. And I read that you called this moment, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. غراندي, a jigsaw of crises. With so many pieces, I wonder, is there unity? Is there a global vision to tackle these crises and take on this moment?
You know, if you sit where I sit from a humanitarian perspective, you see this very clearly. Look at Ukraine, the Caucasus, then you have the Middle East in flames. Egypt is between Gaza and Sudan. You have Yemen further south. And then basically from Sudan all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, you have countries either in conflict or in very fragile situations. Europe is surrounded by a belt of crises. When European states get so worried about flows of refugees into Europe, they should really pay more attention to the urgent need of solving these conflicts. Sudan is very much neglected by the international community. And unfortunately, it's not just in the political domain. Even the humanitarian consequences of this crisis are not paid enough attention to.